Welcome to Success Factors. I'm your host, Brenda, Siri, and today's guest is Jon Secrest, President and CEO of AllPaid. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you, Brenda. Nice to be here.
So nice having you. Thanks for joining us. So, Jon, could you give our viewers a glimpse of what AllPaid is all about?
Well, we like to think the name explains it all. We're a little niche-y, so I'll give you an explanation. We are what's called a payment facilitator, which means that we process payments, but our niche is specifically government agencies. So any kind of payments that consumers make to a government agency, water bills, fines, court fees, taxes, we help process those payments on behalf of those agencies.
Interesting. So why do you only work in the government space? You would think there's a lot of people that need to make payments and you could take them.
Sure. I was just down in a coffee shop and thought we could do that. But the specific reason we are focused exclusively in our space, we were founded 27 years ago by a former sheriff who saw the problem. Like the only way you could bail out, the only way that you could pay a fine was to go to their window and write a check. That was back in 1997. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of places still today in the government space. And his vision was to design a company that solves this problem specifically in this niche. And as a result of that, we can tailor our products and services so that we deal with the special needs of a government agency. So good example of that, we have a 24/7 call center, bilingual call center that helps people if they're having a problem making a payment. Nobody wants to talk to a person when they're making a payment. They'd rather do it online, but sometimes there's problems. Well, if you're at a restaurant and you're standing in front of the cashier, you can resolve that problem right there. But if you're trying to bail out a family member and you're having a challenge and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you want to be able to talk to somebody to resolve it right there. So our investment in a 24/7 call center is unique to our space that really wouldn't be helpful to other segments. So we just specialize so that we can serve our customers even better.
So you just talked about you could use your services if you need to bail someone out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
Can you also use it if you want to pay for someone's commissary payments or provide money to someone who is in jail? Or is it only a service like a bail bondsman type of thing?
Yeah, so our payments are always going to an agency. And what you just described with like a commissary account or a trust account that someone who's incarcerated might have is that payment's eventually going to them.
Okay.
So our agency is the customer, so we're paying, and that really has to do with sort of how we are regulated,
Mm-hmm.
who we are taking payments for, and where the money is going. We'll get into that, but there's a lot of regulations around it, and so that's why we only are the money has to end up at a government agency. So yes, courts. Fines, fees, it gets at taxing entities, utilities. We do a ton of like water bills and that kind of thing, permits, all sorts of things.
So are you like Toast or like Square?
Yeah, very much. They too are payment facilitators, but like us, they've found a niche where they specialize. So, Toast in the restaurant space is very good at tailoring their products and services to that space. But for us, we deal with the special problems that occur in our space. Like an example of that would be at Toast, you've got one customer there, and there's one system at that customer, and it's just a nice, clean process. Well, city of Springfield, and I choose that because there's 41 cities of Springfield in the United States. We might have their utility payments. We might also have their Parks and Rec department. So totally different system, totally different path for that money to flow through. And we are able to adapt to all those different systems that the customer has. So a different problem set, which is again why we specialized in our area.
So what is unique about your services?
I think that last point, the myriad of systems, and what I found really interesting since working in this space, government, unfortunately, is kind of the last place where technology arrives. It's a lot in the news lately about, the IRS working on 1950s code. Well, it's true. We taxpayers are kind of stingy when it comes to government updating their systems. And so there are a lot of things that are either manual processes or very old systems that don't talk to one another. And that's really our specialty, is to help assist those agencies at least be a little modern in terms of how they can take payments without investing in all of those special things that they would need to do to tie all those systems together. So we solve a lot of problems for them in that respect.
Um, uh, are you only at the state? Are you at state level, or are you local government, or both?
Yeah, it's a good question. It all has to do with who can become a merchant. Being a merchant comes with it some regulatory hassles. So again, using the examples you gave of Toast or Square, they're dealing with restaurants and storefronts that aren't their own merchant. But I'm looking out the window at Target. Target is their own merchant. They're big enough. They have an entire regulatory department that can deal with all of the issues associated with taking payments and complying with payment card industry standards. And money movement is regulated at the state level primarily. So you're dealing with 50 different states, how 50 different states want to do that. So in our in our market, states are big enough to be their own merchant. But when you get down to a municipal level or a special taxing district or even some counties, they're not big enough to be able to deal with the hassle. So that's really our niche market. We go all the way down to very, very small towns and municipalities. And I made reference to it earlier. There's still, this is an interesting data point. Last year, 40% of our new customers did not take credit card payments at all before doing business with us.
Oh, wow.
There's still lots of people out there who are writing checks to pay their water bill or for their quarterly tax payments or whatever. So it's like the last place where technology has caught up, and people are so used to an online experience, what we call a frictionless experience. I pick my item, I go right to checkout, I pay, shipping, it's all just a smooth little thing that flows right through. Well, in the government space, it's not like that, but we do our best to try and bridge those gaps so it's a smooth experience for the payer.
Wow, that's amazing. So what differentiates you from other companies similar to yours?
Yeah, there are. We do have competitors in our space that focus exclusively on government, just like we do. A couple of things that we've tried to differentiate ourselves, and I think we've done it pretty well. Number one, that call center I mentioned. Again, it's really important in sort of the court space where you've got to have somebody help. And we also think of that call center as that's a call that the government agency doesn't have to take. And, financial pressures are on all of these government agencies to be very tight with resources. So if we can take some of that burden off of them, that helps. The other thing that we have found is really a benefit to the end customer is we have a 100% payment guarantee. And what that means is your viewers probably already know this, but if you see a charge on your credit card that you don't recognize, you just call your credit card company. It doesn't matter which brand it is, just call. And by law, they have to immediately reverse that charge. And now it's on the merchant to prove that that is a valid charge. There's time and there's some expense involved in that. And through our guarantee, what we do is say, okay, you don't have to worry about that. If the payment is made, you got it, the money flows to you. If it's charged back on the back end or challenged or for some other reason it fails, that's on us to go chase down. And we think that's really valuable to our customers because they can now get a lot more predictable revenue streams because they're not worrying about chasing down transactions that don't fit. And then I'd say the final thing is that ability to deal with all of the different systems and even the lack of systems. There's a lot of processes out there that are completely manual, or a person has to take information from this system and manually type it into that system. And so trying to figure out how you integrate how much is owed and what was paid into all of that. That's where we've really found a niche, is to be able to go in there and say, okay, we'll meet you where you are. If your systems haven't been upgraded, we're not going to say, okay, sorry, you can't do business with us. We'll figure out how to do business with you.
That's amazing. So do you integrate with other software?
Yeah. That's in fact, we have about 12 really great software partners. So I alluded to earlier the fact that we are a highly regulated business. We've been doing it for 27 years, so we're good at it. We understand all of the different requirements in all the 50 states. And so there's a lot of software providers in the government space, everything from the utility billing kinds of platforms. I came across a company last year that all they do is pet licensing software. Okay, it's like, okay, there is a need there. But they don't want to become financially a regulated business like us. So they integrate with us so that when you're going to pay your $25 annual fee to register, my dog is Dakota, to register Dakota every year, that payment flows through us. And it kind of is a smooth experience for the user of their software. So yeah, that's one of the things we do. In fact, one of the ways that we hope to grow is other software providers that are in that space, selling to municipalities and special taxing districts and small counties. If you have a software product there and you want to be able to integrate payment processing into it so that it's a smooth experience for your user, give us a call. We can help that really easily.
Okay, great. So how do you charge for your services?
Well, that's an interesting little twist about doing business in the government space as well. I think everybody understands that there are fees associated with swiping that credit card. In fact, it's amazing how many people along the line are getting a little teeny piece of that transaction from the bank that issued that card to the card network, to the brand, to the bank that's depositing the money. Everybody's getting a little cut. And forever, the pitch to retailers was, yeah, you're going to eat that fee, so you're going to make a little less profit, but people are going to spend more money because they can use a credit card. Mm-hmm. So they may use some money that they don't quite have yet if they have a credit card. Well, in the government space, nobody's going to pay extra for their water bill because they have a credit card. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to pay $250 for their fine instead of $200 because they're using a credit card. So taking credit cards, which is also why many of those agencies still aren't doing it, is traditionally that meant taking a bite out of their profit. And as I said, the profits in that segment are so tight, there's not a lot of money flowing around that they could just say, okay, well, we'll reduce our profit margin by a few points to make it convenient for our customers. So the vast majority of our customers do what's called a convenience fee model. If you're the payer, maybe sometimes you don't feel that convenient, but it really is compared to writing a check and mailing in or going to a government window and standing in line and paying a bill. So we add a fee on top of that. Sometimes it's a flat fee, sometimes it's a percentage fee. But that way, we're going to the government and they can use our services and all of our ancillary services, like that call center, like the payment guarantee, like all of the special reporting we do for them, and it costs them nothing. So we think it's a great value proposition, and we do find that payers will come to us. There's always an alternative to avoid that fee by going around us and doing the old way. But more and more people are getting used to that. You're even starting to see it in like I was at a restaurant in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago. Same thing. The bill came and like, here's your credit card service fee. So people are starting to get used to the fact that you got to pay a little bit more if you're using a credit card, but you're getting points, you're getting other things like that kind of make it worth it.
I love the points myself.
Yeah.
Are there any, I know you touched on this earlier, but are there specific regulations that you have to deal with? I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. We got a whole regulatory department. As I said, it's all kind of regulated my movement is regulated at the state level. What's really interesting about that is we get it on both ends. So, for instance, we don't have any customers, agency customers that are in Alaska, but we do process payments from Alaska. So we need to be licensed in Alaska because Alaska's government is watching out for the payers that reside in their state. So they have certain regulations that we have to comply with. So we're regulated in all 50 states to various degrees. Some require monthly reporting, some require quarterly reporting. Later this month, we have 3 states that are coming to our office in Indianapolis for an in-person audit for several days, which thankfully I don't have to be a part of. But that's sort of the blessing and curse. Curse, it's a lot of work, and it's a big part of our business. But it's also, the blessing is that we can do it, and we can do it better, and we provide that service. And it's hard for people to just decide they're going to get into our business, because you got to go through all of what we've already gone through for 27 years.
So when a payment's made, how does it show up on a customer's credit card statement?
Yeah, it relates to those regulations that we have to sort of try to explain to the payer, you're paying AllPaid, but you're paying this end agency, and we are acting as an agent of that agency. We're not taking your money and doing something else with it, or directing it someplace else. So like if you ever I use Apple Pay on my watch all the time. Again, downstairs getting my coffee. And that will show up on my bill as Apple Pay / coffee shop name. When you use us, it'll say APD / the vendor name. Because again, there's regulations that say we have to help the customer, the payer, understand who they're paying, and does it settle their commitment, and all those things. So that's why it gets a little wonky in there, that we have to kind of clog up the paper on the bill. But hopefully we do a good job making it clear for the payer.
Do you ever have potential customers who come to you hoping to do business with you, but they don't really understand your services?
That's a great one. Yes. We do a lot of how we get new customers is by going to trade shows or conferences, like a conference of mayors for a section of the country, or that kind of thing. And I made reference to it earlier. People are so used to kind of the Amazon experience. It's just so easy. And so they expect, okay, you guys are going to do that for me. But I depend heavily on the systems that they have in place. So if they can't get information, for instance, if they can't extract information out of their systems and get it to me in a secure way of who owes what, I have to kind of take a blind payment and take that money in and say, okay, this person paid this amount, and I don't know whether it's the right amount or not. And that sort of, they're like, well, why, how come that doesn't just flow through? And it really depends on, I'm sorry, but your systems aren't there yet. We'll do as much as we can to make that easy for you to reconcile and to understand who's paying what. But I think that's the biggest misconception, is that there's a magical way that the whole world will tie together, because that's kind of how it works in the rest of the stuff you deal with on a daily basis.
Right. So how do you help your customers when people overpay or underpay their bills?
Believe it or not, that is actually a problem. So what I was just talking about with systems, in cases where the systems aren't tied, and a huge percentage of our customers are in that mode, that they just don't have the ability to provide us with a feed that will allow us to validate that payment. Like, okay, well, overpaying, why would that be a problem? That's a problem because, one, they don't know what to do with the extra money. Two, a lot of times, that card, by the time they get around to reconciling that card may not be there anymore. So there's nowhere to refund that money back through. They aren't directly tied, so they've got to refund that money back through us, back through the card network. So it becomes really a big problem if the amounts are wrong. And even underpaying is clearly a problem, because the payer, let's take the case of a fine or a traffic ticket, something like that. The payer believes they've settled that obligation, and maybe they just keyed in the number wrong. And so there they go, believing that is settled, and then they find out months later, oops, when they get a bench warrant issued for them, that payment wasn't actually paid properly. So again, we put extra steps in the process that allow those more manual agencies to look at it, match it up, say this is where it belongs, yes, it's the right amount, and let it flow through, so they don't have to deal with it after that fact.
Wow, interesting. So if you are the ones accepting the payment, how do your customers reconcile those transactions?
Yeah, so when I spoke earlier about trying to meet the customers where they are, I learned this a couple of months ago. This very state that we are sitting in, this has never happened to me, maybe, or you, probably some of the fine folks that are sitting here today, maybe this has happened. Ever drive down the road and a trooper pulls you over for speeding? Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Not me.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yes, two people right there. Okay. you're going to get that ticket. It's going to say, you owe $300, go to allpaid.com and pay that. Okay, that's all well and good. Let's talk about what happens to that ticket. That ticket, the other part of it, sits in that squad car of that state trooper until the end of his or her shift. Then they take it back to their home office and they put it in a basket. At the end of the week, somebody has to go through all of those tickets and then figure out where you were when you committed that offense so that they can alert the specific jurisdiction. And again, in the county where we are sitting, there are 16 justices of the peace just in this county of where that ticket might belong. So somebody's got to sort through, figure out where that goes. And then they mail it via U.S. mail to that justice of the peace, who then enters it into their system. Okay? So if you don't adapt to that process, like some of our competitors, what you will find is you'd go to pay that ticket and it would say, sorry, your ticket's not here yet. We don't recognize that number. Come back later. So you try again tomorrow. You try again the next day. Well, it could be weeks before that goes through. And by that time, you're sick of trying and you put it in that stack of stuff on the kitchen counter and you forget about it. Well, again, now 2 months later, you're going and you're cleaning the stack of stuff. You go, oh, shoot, I forgot about that ticket. And you go to pay it and find out, oh, you're past due and a warrant has been issued for you. So it's really important to be able to tie that all up. But with us, what we do is we accept that payment immediately. So you can, before you get back on the road, go on your phone, put in the code that says on that ticket and pay it. And then it'll go through our systems, and then our systems will match up with the customer systems so that it flows through eventually when they are ready to accept that payment. So it's, it sounds like old school and really outdated stuff. But as I said, unfortunately, we're in a big state. And that's how it is here.
Wow. So it could actually be that the payment actually gets faster paid than the paperwork does, right?
Yes. Payments move very, very quickly. Money moves around very quickly now. It used to be when you'd swipe a credit card, the merchant wouldn't see that deposit maybe until the end of the month. Now, there are even options for us to settle that out and pay that customer at the end of that day. But in our case, they could accept that. Maybe they choose not to accept that because they don't know where it goes yet. So in my example of the justices of the peace, they don't know which account it's supposed to go to until it's entered into their system. So it sort of sits and holds until it's supposed to go to the right place, and then we can route it accordingly.
So someone gets a ticket, and
one of those people.
Right. One of them gets a ticket, and the justice of the peace hasn't even received the paperwork from the trooper's office where it was being sorted. They don't want to accept that payment, but somewhere along the way they'll say, okay, so there's something about your system that ties them entering that ticket to that payment that's sitting there in a holding pattern.
Yep. They go in and can see everything that's pending, and they match it up. In the cases where we are not integrated with their systems for whatever reason, then they can manually double screen it and go, okay, this one matches this, and settle that out in the court system. We are there for them when they upgrade that system and are able to do interactive data pulls back and forth from their system to external systems. It's something that happens all the time, but obviously in payments, it's got to be very, very secure. So there's some tricks to that. But once they can do that, then it gets automatically. It doesn't take a person to reconcile that. But again, there still may be some delay because of the manual processes before it gets put into their systems.
So I know you mentioned earlier that you are licensed in all 50 states. In those 50 states, is it anything related to government? Like you mentioned, obviously a ticket or a bail bondsman, some, water payments, tax payments. What other type of payments do you take in those states?
Taxes, our biggest category is kind of a grab-all called administrative and civil payments. Permits or Parks and Rec. We have a customer that wants some of those, our terminals that are wireless, because they want to be able to take credit cards at the concession stand at the community ballpark. So all kinds of payments. What's interesting about the regulation piece is all 50 states pay attention to us, and all 50 states have rules, but only 21 of those 50 states believe that what we are doing requires a special, deeper license called a money transmitter license. It's just, again, the independence of the 50 states in the country. They get to decide how they interpret the laws and what they want to be the laws in their state. So that's something that, again, why we have a big regulatory function is because we got to keep up with all of those regulations in all of the states.
So what does 2025 look like for you and for AllPaid?
Well, I said we're 27 years old, but in a way, we are effective this year, a startup again. It's really, really an exciting time. AllPaid, like I said, founder-led since it was formed in 1997. In 2018, a larger company purchased from the founder and brought it into a much, much bigger company. And there's pros and cons to that. A lot of resources when you're part of a bigger company, but also sometimes decisions get made for the good of the whole instead of the best for AllPaid's customers or AllPaid's systems. So in 2024, the management team and I worked with a group of outside investors to buy the company back and bring it independent again. That was, we closed on that transaction last August. We're an independent company once again. We are re-energized. We are growing like crazy as we have to replace all of those functions that we used to get from our corporate office, like HR and finance and some IT functions. So we've added, our employee base has grown 25% since August. And we plan on continuing to grow. So we're rebuilding our sales force. We're rebuilding all of the things to be an independent company. And we are fired up. It's just so fun to be back in control and to control our own destiny now, and to be doing exactly what our customers need us to do and not having to worry about any other divisions or any other needs of any other company. It's been really fun.
I can hear your passion and your excitement. You know, it's very real for you. So I'm really excited for you. It's wonderful. So if potential clients are watching today and they're interested in learning more about AllPaid, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we're going to put the number up there, but I'll say the easiest way to get in contact with us is go to our website, allpaid.com, ALLPAID.com, and do the contact form, because there it allows us to do a little automation, figure out who you need to talk to, what are your special needs. If you're one of those software providers, like I talked about, that would like to use us to make your product better, that goes one way. If you're a small municipality or government agency and you'd like to start taking payments, that will get you to the right person who understands your state, your particulars, and get the right solution to you. And we love to help you out because, as I said, we're back in growth mode and we are ready to go.
Good. Well, Jon, it's been such a pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for sharing with our audience information about AllPaid. And again, if you want to get in contact with Jon's company, it's AllPaid, ALLPAID.com. I'm Brenda Siri. Thank you for joining us today on Success Factors, and we'll see you next time.